Eights.
Hello.
Today we are going to give a recap from our gravel skills camp as well as the Greenwood gravel race that we participated in this past weekend. Make sure.
And before we do that, we need to make sure that we'll actually record our chat. Here we are.
All right. We were having some technical difficulties, but hopefully this will work now.
No.
So when we started our triathlon camps back in 2014, we were all about getting all of our athletes together to train in great warm places like Claremont, Florida, or in Greenville in the mountains to accumulate a lot of good training stress and to just focus on swim, bike, and run. But as we learned more about the sport and as we progressed in our knowledge and our experience, we realized that a lot of triathletes lack the basic fundamental skills for good bike riding, good terrain management, good bike handling skills. And it isn't until we put an athlete into an unfamiliar environment or ask them to do something that they begin to struggle. And a lot of athletes, they'll show up to races and just they're anxious about a certain part of the course and then they just try to figure it out on race day. But it brings so much stress and anxiety and worry. And what we realized over time is if we can teach athletes those basic skills, you're never too good, you're never too experienced, you're never too fit to learn the basic skills, that if we could teach athletes the basics, then they don't have to train as hard. They don't have to be so focused on the numbers, that if they have the basic skills, they can outrace their competition in many ways just because they have better terrain management. They're not expending so much energy. They're not as anxious or scared or worried about certain features on the course. So our focus for our camps shifted over the years, that now no matter what camp we do, we always make sure to include a heavy skill focus to get back to those fundamentals. And now that we're getting into more off-road, adding more off-road camps into our resume, it's so important to teach athletes those basic skills. And I am proof that you are never too good or too fit or too experienced to go back to the basics, because I started gravel riding after a decade plus of triathlon racing and a lot of experience. And I know how to ride a bike on the road, but I didn't know those basics for riding a bike off road. And as a result, I crashed. I had 2 crashes within 2 weeks. And because of those crashes, it really wrecked my confidence and it caused me to not enjoy off-road riding. And usually athletes, when they have an accident or that something happens that is very scary, that you lose that confidence in your abilities. And so this past weekend was really special in a way that we had a great group of athletes who stepped up to the challenge of off-road racing, and not just off-road gravel racing, but racing in less than ideal conditions. Can you talk a little bit about what our athletes experienced over these 3 days?
Yeah. So if we start with the middle day, which was the race, the weather it actually turned from being pretty good on the first day of the camp, into just being absolutely like disastrous. It poured down rain all night long, and it was so loud at times. It actually it even woke me up at the night. From the sleep, and you hear that heavy rain. It's like, oh my gosh, the course, it'll be soggy. And sure it was, on the and the forecast predicted that rain will stop right around when we start the race. Well, that didn't happen. It was still raining, and the course was just so muddy, so slippery, so soggy. The water was standing in places that they have to reroute the course several times, even as we were doing the race. One of the organizers on the motorcycle have to go ahead of the group and start putting up the signs to rerouting the course, because there were some places that were just not rideable. You would not be able to go through, not be able to go and swim through with your bike. So yeah, it was really adverse conditions, but the athletes faced it, with the skill set that they just learned the day before, or to kind of polish those skills. And it was really cool to actually hear that, after the race when we did the debrief, that many of them, they apply those skills, and also they caught themselves with doing the wrong thing, that don't do that. So but that's like the best, like a piece of learning, when you realize, like, I'm doing something wrong and I know how to do it better, and they corrected it and immediately they felt better. So it was, there was a lot of stuff that could go wrong with the race, but nobody got hurt, nobody had really true difficulties, although
Everybody finished.
Everybody finished, and we have um, somebody get good placing, some hardware, so it was great. And then on the third day, the weather was again a little bit better, and the course looks different. We basically rode the majority of the or a big part of the short loop course, and even the athletes are like, wow, it looks like a different course. So it's really cool with these off-road races, where you can just kind of, like, at the same course, it can feel completely different on different day.
Yeah. And when we do these skill camps, we're not about the mileage. We're all about the learning, which means there's a lot of stopping. There's a lot of learning, talking through. And with that also comes facing some of your fears, trying something that you've never done before. And it was really cool to see some of our athletes step up and embrace those fears. And even if they didn't try it, we never force anyone to try it, but they at least just talked through it. And this is what scares me, but I think I'm more confident in this area, so I'll try that. And it was just great to see them stepping into a new type of discomfort, but being okay with that because they have the right skills. So the course laid out perfectly for us to advance our skills by starting on this parking lot, learning the important skills of light hands, heavy feet, body bike separation, how to balance your weight and hinge at the hips. So you have, so that you can execute good body position on certain types of features. And then we started to ride, and every time we got to something, we would stop and we would have the athletes practice. And because
we discussed it, we explain,
demonstrate,
ask the athletes, so what would you do in this situation? And then, there is a better way of how to do it. And we practice it, and they practice a lot. And again, so it's not just like we're riding and you only see the feature, a certain feature only once. We stop and we sectioned it, we talked about it, and they practice, several times before we restart the ride and went to the other place.
Yeah. So it was a really effective first day. We covered less than 20 miles over several hours, but we felt like we got a lot accomplished. And that also helped the athletes for the next day, which was the race day. And then, as Corral mentioned, the course was very different on the third day, and we wanted to do, the majority of our campers did the shorter loop, which was still a long loop, but was about 40 some miles. So we did that loop with them.
It was still long because, some of them, they rode it close to 4 hours.
Yeah, 3 to 4 hours. So, miles on the gravel go by very slow. So we went back so that they could experience it again and also tell us what they found comfortable, what they worked on, but also areas that they struggled with. And we were able to still do more skills on that part of the course. So we got a lot out of the whole 3 days. But the big takeaway from this is that you're never too good to keep working on your skills. I think that's very important for athletes to keep in mind, that you might be good, but you could be even better at your skills, or you probably haven't even mastered the basics. And it's worth investing into a skills camp so you can really work on those basic skills, because a lot of athletes don't understand how to safely ride a corner, how to descend, how to climb, even on the road. And then you take an athlete off the road and there's a whole new set of skill sets that are needed. So I really do encourage athletes to invest into the skills camp, because it will take you a long way. And we have learned over the past 10 years of putting on camps as to what you, the athlete, can benefit the most from. Sure, we can prescribe workouts, and we love doing, training camps where we can just exhaust you and you feel accomplished at the end. But it would be a mistake for us to not focus on those skills and to make sure that when you leave the camp, you feel like you're a safer and more confident triathlete or off-road racer.
And like Marnie said, you're never too good to learn some new skills, and you may think like, oh, I know it all, and I can guarantee you that I can put you through several tasks on the bike, and you will not be able to really do it well. And we can show you a better way, and you can save a lot of time in the triathlon by just knowing how to ride, and also just the confidence. I remember in some of the triathlons, like the Blue Ridge comes into mind, right? It was like this past year, it was really foggy on the top, and people were riding so slow and scared. And I was passing so many people as the part of the relay, because to me the situation wasn't scary at all, because I know, like, if something happens, if something just suddenly jump in front of me, I know how to deal with it. I know how to handle it and do it safely. So you can save a lot of time. And then later on that same course, when we get to the bottom, and right before you hit the town, there were several like roundabouts, sharp turns, and railway crossing, and the volunteers were getting nuts, just like stop, slow down. And I was like, hey, I got it, no worries, and just kind of zip right through that without losing any speed. So you can really gain a lot of time by just be more confident on the bike. And you might say, well, I never be riding off road, I don't need to be doing these gravel skills. But like Marnie said, we actually include these skills in all of our camps now. And I can tell you that even for, again, me as an example, I've been racing bikes since I was a kid, and I've been always on the bike. And it wasn't until I started riding really like a more advanced on the off-road, on the mountain bikes and on the gravel, where I realized, like, wow, I can still apply better skills to my road riding than what I have been doing before. And just keep in mind, I've been doing a lot of the USA Crit Series, which is it's nighttime racing, criteriums, tight turns, many turns. We just talk about it with Albi, right? Like, I did 100 plus turns in one race, in high speed, diving in the turn, sprinting out of the corner, slingshotting it, and now I know even better way how to do it. So it's like almost like I wish I had that fitness I have back then with the skills I have now. I would be a whole different rider. So you really can learn a lot better skills, even if you think that you know it all.
Yeah. And I can attest to that, in that I might not be the strongest athlete. I don't have a high FTP. My numbers aren't very shocking at all, but I know how to manage the terrain, and that's my secret weapon. And we want to pass. And so we will share our race recap. Like it's frozen.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Are we good?
It works.
Okay.
Still a few more technical difficulties. So if you see us freezing out, bear with us.
Yeah.
You will get to the end.
Yeah. All right. So now our race recap. So as I mentioned before, I had a very rocky start to gravel racing, and I find mountain biking a lot easier than gravel riding. But I think the reason for it is that my start to gravel riding was I was just thrown into off-road racing. My start to mountain biking started in a smooth parking lot, and then it progressed to a somewhat smooth trail, and then it progressed to a little bit more difficult trail that had roots, and then it progressed to a grassy field with some roots, and so on and so on. It was a much more gradual progression. And because of that, I have not had any crashes. Of course, I've fallen on the mountain bike. Who doesn't? That's part of it.
It's more like a slip,
didn't unclip, a tree pushed me down, those type of things. Hugged me. But I haven't had any major crashes, whereas I did have major crashes and a hard time with gravel riding. So I'm happy to say that this race for me was a huge milestone, and I'm still not only am I excited for more gravel racing, but I'm also very proud of myself because of all the failures and discomfort and dislike of gravel riding to 2 years later to come to this place where I actually really enjoyed it.
You feel confident.
And I feel confident. And even with it raining and pouring and horrible weather, to be racing with there was only a few women in this race, which I would love to see more women in these off-road races. But to be racing with all of these guys that I don't know, it's not like a normal group ride where you know it. So you're in a race with people you don't know in very adverse conditions, and it's raining.
And everybody's dick because they're looking for themselves.
Yeah, yeah, and then to be confident going into that, that's a huge step forward for me. So I'm really proud of myself that I didn't have those nerves. I was just really excited to race. I love racing my bike. So for me, I really enjoyed this race. When we started after the neutral section, then we got going. The fields kind of separated. I do not have very good takeout speed, so it's very hard for me to get into the front group. I have to work just so hard. So I'm usually find myself, whereas Corel is able to get towards the front group, I usually find myself towards the second group, like the chasing group. And then I'm usually towards the back of that group. So I have to work really hard. But then I was like, not to worry. There's the single track section coming up. I know that people are going to slow down. And it's a short section, but we had practiced it and I felt comfortable with everything in there. And I was like, no big deal. I'll be able to catch up. Well, wouldn't you know, I caught up to a bunch of people stopped on the single track. And I see Corel ahead and he's like, turn around. So apparently a tree fell down. The river was flowing over the concrete bridge. There was no way to get through the single track. So after everybody in the long course got started, went down this muddy single track. I even fell because somebody fell in front of me. There's no way you can, when you're riding your bike on ice, you can't stop. So that's what it's like in these muddy conditions. So I fell too. And then, so we had to walk.
I slid my way down. I stayed on a bike that just kind of control slide.
Yeah.
And it was kind of fun, but it was control slide.
Yeah.
And then they stop you and now you have to get up. Well, how do you get up? This slippery uphill.
Walk your way back up. So we walked our way back up.
And as we were walking up, the people were still coming down like, oh, no.
Don't go. And they can't stop either. So people are falling and slipping.
And then 5 minutes later, the short course people were coming. So, yeah.
And that's a big part of off-road racing is just, it's very unpredictable. And like Corel said, they can be changing the course as you're racing. And that's just part of it. So Ben,
at one point we were actually voting in our group, like if we are on the right path or not, like who wants to keep continuing this way and who thinks we should go and turn around because there was another turn because somebody had downloaded the map from the day before, somebody had the current map. So we were kind of like deciding and didn't decide to stay on the course, which was the right course.
Yeah, that's good. So Ben, the race organizer, he was on his motorcycle. He decided to regroup everybody, start again with the long course a few miles down the road. So this was an extra 3 or 4 miles. People stopped and we could regroup again. And I actually enjoyed that because it was a good little warm up for me. Corel, he was able to take off a layer of clothing. Mm-hmm. And I felt pretty good. I just needed to pee, but there just wasn't enough time. So we restarted again and Corel still I'll let him share his story, but his group kind of went ahead and I was able to find myself in a good group. It kind of spread out a little bit, but my big focus was, okay, there's a section of several miles and then there's a road section and I really need to be in a group when I get to that road section. So it doesn't matter how hard I'm working. I could be redlining it. My heart rate, it actually was the highest of the whole race in that one section. But as long as I can be in a group in that road section, I'm going to gain so much extra time and it's going to be so much easier as the race goes on. So I was able to get to this group and I was really happy with that. And as far as the course goes, I mean, it was a mix of gravel, a little bit of chunky gravel, not too much of that peanut butter clay. So I would say that it was all very rideable. You never had to get off your bike and push your bike. So that was a good thing. But I was able to stay with this group for a very long time. It was about 10 to 12 guys. We would pick up a few people would catch back on, but it was a strong group. And there's times when it felt comfortable. My glasses were giving me a lot of issues. I cleaned them right before the race, and for some reason, it just felt like I had this layer of like Windex on them. The water was just sticking on there. So I kept taking them off, trying to put them back on, take them off. I'd stick them down my
and the issue with the glasses with these conditions, like you need to have something to protect your eyes, or it's just the gravel, the sand, the mud. It just keeps spraying in your eyes.
Yeah, so I was just very frustrated because I really couldn't stay close to somebody's wheel because I had all this stuff flying into my face, and then somewhere along the road, my glasses just fell off, and I wasn't going to turn around and get them and miss this group. So I was like, whatever, but. Happy ending. Somebody picked up my glasses and returned them.
And it was none of our athletes, which actually they
all said they
confessed that they've seen. Oh, those are Marnie glasses. Bye.
Yeah. So none of our athletes.
But it's okay because if Marnie didn't want to turn around to pick her own glasses, I don't expect anybody else to pick me up for her.
Yeah. So I lost my glasses, so I had to ride the whole thing without glasses, which I was thinking about my dad, who was probably looking down at me and just saying, Marnie, this isn't good for your eyes. He was an optometrist. So it was very hard for me to stay close to people on the gravel section because they would just keep shooting up. But I was able to do the best that I could, and I felt very comfortable with my skills. The group that I was with was surprisingly strong on the uphills. Usually when I ride with guys, they're obviously strong on the downhills and the flat sections, but I'm usually able to go a little bit ahead on the uphills and kind of use that with my own momentum, my own rhythm, and kind of wait for them a little bit. But they were very strong on the uphills, which was hard for me because I really didn't get that rest.
And the reason is because you got stronger and more confident. So you were in the group of like different caliber than what you maybe were before, which before, the guys were not as strong. So you were able to excel a bit more on the uphills, but here you were just the equal part of the whole group.
Yeah, and I did take pulls and shared my load with the guys, and so I was really happy. Now, my biggest struggle in the race was somewhere a little bit more than halfway. I never look at the mileage, so I'm not sure exactly where it was, but there was this steep downhill with a sharp right turn, and then you go up a hill. So there's a lot going on. I needed to safely get through, but then there was kind of sand and grass and rock. So I was trying to pick the right line, but in order to pick the right line, I needed to almost kind of go straight into the grass a little bit because I couldn't just turn my wheel. I would have gone down. So as I was kind of moving my body position to take this turn and to kind of almost overcorrect so that I wouldn't go straight into the grass, but still kind of keep my line, both of my feet unclipped from my pedals.
And it's gonna happen because there's, it's a bumpy road, so also it just kind of like bucks you out.
Yeah. So I'm just balancing kind of on the seat and my handlebars now and trying to clip back in. And as I'm trying to clip back in, and I was probably shifting during that time, knowing that.
Well, it's also, we discussed that, you can say you dropped your chain. But the reason why you drop the chain when you are on a clip, it's really, really common because on the off-road, because when you are clipped in, you put a tension on the chain. So like the top part of the chain, it's firm. You unclip and now everything is bouncing because there's no tension on the chain. So it's super easy to drop it.
Yeah.
And actually before the race, we discussed, and I told Marnie, don't go to the easiest gear and don't go to the hardest gear on those really bumpy descents or segments, because then the chain bumps too much. It can just bump off that gear into the spokes or into between the cassette and the frame.
Yeah. So in my mind, I'm descending, stay safe, don't crash, shift gears, body position, there's a climb, stay with the group. Everything was happening very fast. And as I'm trying to clip back in, my chain gets stuck in the front derailleur. So One guy goes by, another guy goes by, the last guy in the group goes by and was like, that was a tough turn. I'm like, but can you wait for me? And then I was alone. And I got my bike unstuck and my chain unstuck as quick as possible. I clipped back in, which was a little hard because it's on a rocky uphill. So I had to, find the right gear and go. And then they were gone and they were out of sight on this really challenging gravel road. And then all I could think about was that's my group. I worked so hard for, it was probably over 40, 50 miles to be with this group. And now they left me. And so in my head, I'm like, maybe they'll wait for me. And then the other side is, no, Marnie, this is bike racing. They're not going to wait for you. And so I just pushed as hard as I could because I was like, hey, you never know what can happen. I look behind me, there's no one behind me. And so I may as well ride by myself and just see what happens if I can catch them, or maybe somebody else has a mechanical, whatever. And that's how I think through all bike races is I never count myself out because anything can happen in a race. And as I'm riding, as I get to the pavement, I see them far in the distance. I can kind of see their lights blinking and it looks like they're kind of soft pedaling. And in my head, I'm like, oh, they're waiting for me. They're waiting for me. They weren't waiting for me. They were just in part of the course where it was rerouted. So they weren't quite sure where to go. And they were also debating which way do we go. And I caught up. And by the time I caught up, I'm like seeing stars. I'm breathing heavy. And I'm like, thanks, guys. And they're like, good job catching back up. And I was like, okay. So then a second or two later, back to time trialing again, rotating in the group. So I was really happy that, and I was like, I am not leaving this group again. I'm doing everything I can to stay in this group. And even towards the end, as we were about 5 miles away, I was really struggling. I did not do a good job with my nutrition just because the race was just so dynamic. It was just so hard to even just grab the straw and drink from my hydration pack. And we were 5 miles away. And at that point, I could have been like, you know what? I'm fine. I can just ride by myself. I can just ease up a little bit. But then I was like, no, I want to finish with this group. I worked so hard. I'm going to dig and keep going as hard as I could. I knew that the guys towards the end, because it was on a pavement road, just like in typical group ride fashion, they're going to sprint and try to, whoever can get there first. So I was fine with that, but I was happy that I was able to stay with them the whole time. There wasn't a lot of talking in my group. And there was no conversations. We were all just pure on racing, and that was a lot of fun. So I ended up finishing third female in the race and behind 2 pro females. So I was very happy. I finished in about 4:14, which was 17 and a half miles per hour for the 74 miles that we rode. So I was happy about that.
Nice. Very good. Yeah, so rather than talking about my race, I just want to talk about more of the fundamentals of the bike racing and master bike racing, and what you need to expect if you sign up for a race like that, and what needs to be done if you want to be successful. So not like triathlon, where triathlon is very kind of like a measured effort. It's your effort, and you often hear how athletes say, I'm just focusing on my race and I don't care what everybody else is doing. Well, if you do that in the Mastart bike race, you will never be successful. I don't care how strong you are, if you're not riding with the dynamic of the group and throwing in a whole bunch of all-out efforts to stay in that group, you will lose time, and you will lose a lot of time. So bike racing, like Marty mentioned, like these starts are like super hectic, and you need to be able to go from zero to all out effort pretty much at the beginning. So the proper warm up is crucial. So as we were warming up before the race, I did several micro bursts, just completely all out as fast as I can spin, and also doing it on the chunky gravel just to get that feel. And so I did several miles, and including these all-out bursts, because I know that I will need to kind of, pre-fatigue the legs, like build that lactate there, clear it out again, and then go to the start and just a few minutes from the start and get going. And that's pretty much how the race goes. You have to. There were several times, especially like you can be in the moment where you just feel like I'm just absolutely blowing myself out. I'm doing all out sprint, all out effort, and we are just 5 miles into the race. There's no way I can sustain it. Well, nobody's saying you have to sustain it, but you have to stay in that group, because that one extra all out effort can make a 20, 30 minutes at the end. Because you stay with this group, it goes so much faster. And so for me, it was just a lot of these dynamics. And as you go uphill fast, you go downhill fast, you go into turns fast, and you know, uh, so for the beginning, I was in the like I got disconnected from the very first group. I was in the second chasing group. They actually got dropped from the chasing group. That with some of the help, I got to get back to that chasing group. And then at one point, we got back to the first group again. So it was one big group. Then the whole peloton kind of slowed down, like reshuffling what's gonna happen next. And at that point, it just kind of hurt me, because you went from that really really hard effort for a past hour, try to get back to that whatever front group, because you can see them and like we're working together, and then you almost get close, and then somebody decides it's probably better if I just go by myself and sprint out, and then it gets chaotic again, and you lose time instead of working together. So all these things are happening. Then you finally get there and everybody slows down, and it just hurt my leg. So then when the next surge came, and it was a really chunky uphill, and I just got popped. And then I spent the last 2 hours with riding with another rider, which was like super strong, and he was 65-year-old or something like that. I know him as a friend, but like super strong, and I kind of struggled. And it's just you just giving the best you can. I tried to rotate with him a few times, but he was way too stronger anyway. But it's just like that's the difference between bike racing. So if you get to, and it's actually very beneficial to your fitness and to your overall kind of like goals for the season. So anytime I was hurting so much, and I just kept telling myself that but it's such a good deposit into the fitness bank. And my main objective is to get something out of this. I want to hurt myself. I want to dig deep so I can benefit from it later in the season.
Yeah, I think that these doing bike races, doing group rides, it is really beneficial for on-road triathlon, because when you learn how to suffer and to dig deep, when you aren't looking at metrics, you're just focusing on the dynamics of what's happening in front of you and around you, then you're not pacing, you're racing. So you're an active participant. And although it's good to pace yourself in races, in triathlons, you need that pacing. You can't just be going beyond your abilities, or else you will blow up. But you learn a new level of suffering. You learn how to react quicker. You learn how to make better decisions. And I think oftentimes metrics can be paralyzing to athletes, because they look at their heart rate, oh, I'm going too hard, or they look at their power, oh, I'm pushing too hard, and then they ease up. But maybe it's just in that one moment, that's what you needed to do. It's not going to last forever. So I think that these bike races and group riding, and just being in the dynamics of not focusing on pacing, but being active to what's around you, can be really helpful, because it just gives you a whole new set of tools, and you can use those for on the road racing. Yeah. So it was a great camp. It was a great race. We survived the rain, the dirt. I think I'm still picking gravel out of my hair and out of my teeth from the day, but it was really great. And I'll also say that I'm very proud of our athletes for showing up to the race. I think it's very easy to bail on a race when the weather's not ideal. But you have that extra incentive and accountability that, hey, this is part of a camp experience that I am part of. And I think it's the same thing with our regular training camps, that, normally if it was too tired or the weather's not ideal, it's so easy to just go back to what's familiar, what's comfortable. And so that's another positive of a camp experience, is it does take you out of your comfort zone, and it teaches you that our athletes said, well, now I know I can ride in the rain, or I'm going to be okay in the rain. We even joked with them that, you guys just rode 40 plus miles in off-road, rainy, muddy conditions. Now just think if it rains in a road triathlon when it's nice, smooth pavement, how much more confident you're going to be. And then the last day of camp, it was very cold when we started. And, it's so easy to just stay inside on the trainer when it's cold, but they got outside, they rode, they were tired. And so they got on a whole new set of skills. All right. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, just let us know. Bye.
Cheers.